My name is Commissioner Frank Avila, and I'm a commissioner at the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District of Greater Chicago. And I have as my guest Ryan Anderson. Ryan, glad to be on our show. Ryan leads and implements the Midwest Pesticide Action Center Integrated Marketing Campaign and Outdoor Program. The Midwest Pesticide Action Center was founded in 1994 to address widespread concerns over pesticide use. The Midwest Pesticide Action Center works at the local, state, and regional level to implement long-term policy changes through advocacy, education, and outreach. They create programs aimed at reducing pesticide use both indoor and outdoor for populations at risk due to high exposure or sensitive to pesticides, including children, pregnant women, people with asthma, and low-income area. Ryan has a Master of Sustainable Solutions from Arizona State University and holds a dual bachelor's degree in biology and electronic journalism from Butler University. Ryan has extensive experience advancing science-based solutions in the urban and residential community, highlighted by his leadership of Midwest Grown Green Natural Lawn Care initiative that has recruited 10 pesticide-free parks, 20 points of purchase retailers, and more than 200 pledges in his first year. Ryan, thanks for being on my show. Ryan.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so you seem like you have a lot of experience, and I think you are one of the top experts in the United States on how to take care of natural lawn. That's excellent.
I don't know in the United States, but
well, you know, Brian, I had you come on our show because you have something called What is Chicago Grown Green Week?
yeah, so Chicago Grows Green Week is a subsection of our larger Midwest Grows Green initiative. And essentially, get this, it's 8 days packed with about 7 different organic gardening and natural lawn care activities. So we kick off Chicago Grows Green. It's from May 11th through May 19th. And on May 11th, we're going to kick off Chicago Grows Green at Ivanhoe Fieldhouse, which is in Riverdale. And I believe you will be there alongside the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District and the UIC Freshwater Lab. And we're going to cover the environmental and health effects that are associated with the U.S. lawn and garden sector on that day. And then we're going to finish or end Chicago Grows Green Week on May 19th at Dig Right In Landscaping's warehouse in Westchester, Illinois, where we're going to celebrate all the progress that has gone on in terms of sustainable landscaping over the week. And in between those 2 days, May 11th and May 19th, we're going to have webinars, we're going to have what we call Midwest Grows Green kickoff events, and we're going to have volunteer opportunities for residents to get involved in this sustainable landscaping field that is really growing over the past few years in Chicago.
And spring is here.
Yes.
The weather, I hope it's going to change now, and everyone's going to be out there taking care of their lawn. So why is the Chicago Grown Green Week needed?
Yeah, it centers around this question that I field all the time, and that's the question of, can we manage our landscapes, and specifically lawns, with no or limited pesticides, synthetic pesticides, or fertilizers? My answer, of course, is always yes, we can. It's called organic gardening or natural lawn care, and these approaches. People across Greater Chicago are already applying these approaches and practices, and they're going to continue to do it in the future. But for those that are unfamiliar with these approaches, why not put a spotlight on these practices that we have going on across Greater Chicago? And so Chicago Grows Green Week is that spotlight for sustainable landscaping practices within this week.
Interesting. And it'd be for 11 days.
8 days, 7 events in those 8 days.
7 events there. Now, can you go over the natural lawn care approach, and how can we effectively implement it? Because the key is how to implement it.
Yeah.
And that's the key. And they need someone like you and your the Midwest Pesticide Action Center to help them implement it.
Absolutely. So whenever I talk about natural lawn care, I like to compare it to how we should maintain our own bodies. So let me ask you, Frank, if you want to have a healthy body, what are the 2 things that you can control the most?
I could say what I eat.
Yes.
And what I buy.
What you buy. There's also something else. Have you gone on a run recently or a walk recently?
Well, I go out dancing.
Yes, so the fitness
Exercise,
and that
yeah,
exercise,
yeah.
right? So the exercise in our diet. You can also control the exercise and the diet for your grass as well. A lot of people don't think about it, but it's a living organism. So for the diet, it's about the chemicals and the organic matter that we apply to it. So when I talk about the diet to people, I always say that you need to get a soil test for your grass. Soil test is just like going to the doctor to get a checkup, where they tell you what nutrients are in your soil, so the nitrogen, the phosphorus, the potassium. It'll tell you the pH level. Is it too low, which means it's too acidic, or is it too high, which means it's basic? And it'll tell you the organic matter content of your soil. And then from that analysis, the soil test provider, which is often from a university, will tell you what nutrients you need, and what nutrients, what pH, if you need lime or anything like that, and they'll give you some recommendations for how to treat your soil. Once you got that recommendations, then it's ready to you're ready to put your lawn onto that diet. And we always like to say, you know, there's two types of diets. There's the organic, right? Yeah. And then there's the synthetic, or the processed foods that you can do for your own body. Well, it's the same thing with lawns. We have organic fertilizers, and we have natural, and we have synthetic fertilizers. And so we recommend the organic fertilizers because those feed these microorganisms, these protozoa, these earthworms that kind of build this soil organic matter and the soil life, and that ultimately feeds the grass plant. So that's the diet that I'm talking about with natural lawn care. And the second thing for natural lawn care is the fitness. And that's things like mowing no lower than 3 inches so that your grass focuses more on building the roots of its system, or of the plant, which is the most important part of the plant. It's aerating, which is core aerating, taking out these holes about 3 to 6 inches deep. And they're little cylinders, and they leave it on the ground, and that reduces soil compaction so that the roots can keep on growing. And then finally, it's watering properly at 1 inch per week. And that should be one thorough watering, so that once again the roots continue to grow deep and dense. And if you have this deep and dense turf structure, it will basically be resilient, it'll be strong, and next spring it holds all these nutrients and all these hormones that it will spring right back up, so that you reduce your synthetic pesticides, your synthetic fertilizers, and your water needs over time.
That, you know, I never diet and exercise for a human being to stay healthy, and what we put in our body to stay healthy, comparing it to soil. That's excellent. That's a good a good description on how to stay healthy, both human ourselves, and how to keep our lawn healthy. And because if we buy, and you're mentioning buy synthetic or organic. And if you buy synthetic, if I eat food that's a synthetic or processed food, all of that is not good for me personally. But if you buy organic with the less ingredients in there, you stay healthy.
Yeah, you know, a lot of people don't recognize that they just work in different ways. Synthetic goes straight to the root, which will get you the green growth that everyone really likes really quick. But sometimes that could actually cause your plant to focus too much on the shoots. And so that could actually stress out the plant, and that's what, if you might have heard of a concept called burning the turf, where you could actually kill the turf with synthetic fertilizers. Organic fertilizers feeds the soil. It needs to be broken down by microorganisms. So it gets over kind of extended period of time, so it stays in the soil longer and kind of gets the nutrients for the grass when it needs it.
Interesting. And so your Chicago Grow Green Week will explain to the public on what to do and how to do it and what to buy.
Yeah, we're going to go through mainly that approach of the natural lawn care approach in creative ways. We have our kickoff events where we have different games that talk about the different aspects of natural lawn care, and that's a really effective way to get it through. And then we're going to have regular presentations because everyone learns differently. And we're actually also going to have a webinar for our park and school district managers on May 15th. That's going to talk about composting. So another aspect of natural lawn care.
Interesting. Now, does natural lawn care only reduce toxin, or are there added benefits to implementing the approach?
Yes, so I'm glad you asked that, and this kind of continues to go into this being as a living organism, right? And just over the past 10 years, there's been some really interesting research that has compared our gut biome the environment in our gut, our intestines, to the environment in our soil.
Yeah.
Both of these environments contain billions of microorganisms, right? That provide essential services such as cycling nutrients, disease resistance, as well as water retention. And so when you start to use some of these products like pesticides or processed foods for both these environments, it starts to deteriorate some of these environments, such as the gut microbiome. That's what we call these microbiology in the intestines, and then also the soil biology in our lawns. And so once you deteriorate that, you know, for the gut, we start to see some chronic diseases that can kind of pop up, such as colon cancer. Well, it's the same kind of thing for soil quality as well. You start to see more disease because you've reduced that microbiology in the soil, and then also poor nutrient cycling. And then, but fortunately, the natural lawn care approach is focusing on building this soil biology. So it's feeding these microorganisms, which ultimately feed the grass. And then it's also building up what we call organic matter, which is kind of compost, grass clippings, or mulching leaves. And so it builds up that organic matter, which also can improve the water retention of your soil. So, you know, I'm not going to say it's going to help you avoid any flood, but it could, a miniature flood or anything like that, by increasing that water retention in the soil. So it's really interesting, some of these added benefits that people don't realize from doing a new approach.
I never really, our gut and our body, right, we have billions and billions of microorganisms in their body, you know, and you're comparing it to the soil.
Yeah. It's been just in the recently 10 years or so, there's been a lot of different research on that, and that's something that we're also looking at as well. With Midwest Grows Green, we're doing some research on that.
Interesting, interesting. Yeah. Because spring is here, and a lot of people, as I mentioned, they're out there at the retail stores going to start buying products for their lawn, and a lot of them think that the product that they're buying is going to help improve their lawn, but in actuality it's not, and they have products out there that say this will do this and that, but as you're saying, that it may kill the soil.
It depends, yeah.
And dirt is very good.
Yes.
Yes. Now, here's the thing that when I go into a retail store and I see from the floor to the ceiling, I see weed killer, see, and people are buying them left and right, and they spray it on their lawn to kill the weeds. Now, are all weeds bad or not?
Glad you asked, because no, not all weeds are bad. That's a common misconception that we have. Dandelions, for example, and other weeds actually do no harm to our grass. And actually, dandelions attract pollinators such as bees and butterflies, so they have those added benefits. There's a number of other weeds that help with reducing soil erosion or increasing disease resistance. White clover, for example, is a really great weed that people consider as a weed that improves or increases the nitrogen in your soil, as well as can reduce some soil compaction by the way that it operates. And so what I always like to tell people about is to try to tolerate weeds to a certain extent, especially dandelions, because they're not killing your grass.
Yes.
And if you do have to use a pesticide, well, try to avoid to use a pesticide, but if you do have to use it, use the least toxic version that you can, so that you can protect children, pets, and wildlife.
Interesting there. Always, because I think everyone thinks that they see a weed, dandelion, and they want to get rid of it. I remember I went to a conference, and a person mentioned that instead of buying a weed killer, because it doesn't kill the weeds, because it's going to come back next year, or it might kill you, or it might kill your dog, or it might harm your children. But he suggests using vinegar. And I tried it, vinegar, and it works.
Yeah,
I had a spray can. I sprayed with spots, sprayed it, and it did.
There are vinegar solutions, and that's a non-toxic solution. The one thing, disclaimer that I will say is vinegar will also kill your grass.
Yes.
So
that's why you got
a spot treatment.
Spot treatment, because if you do that, boom. Now, and I'm glad you mentioned that all weeds are not bad. That because as a human being, we all think that Every weed out there is bad. There. Now, what are some less toxic lawn and garden products? Because that's a problem. A lot of people will say, okay, I want to do a natural lawn, but what do I buy? See, so what a person buy?
Yeah, so once again, I'm going to bring it back to that natural lawn care approach.
Yeah.
And when you go in a hardware store, you should be thinking about that approach, and really 3 components you should be thinking about.
3?
Yeah, 3 components I'll give you. First, the grass seed. You want to look at the grass seed that you want. Second, the fertilizer.
Fertilizer? Okay.
And then third, yes, if you needed, the weed and pest control.
Okay.
So we'll start off with the grass seed.
Okay.
You want to assess the environment of your lawn. If it's really shady, right, there are going to be certain, you're going to want a grass seed mix that is kind of tall fescue dominated. Because tall fescue does a lot better in shady areas than annual bluegrass, which needs about 8 hours of sunlight per day. And so a lot of people are buying annual bluegrass in shady areas, and that's just not going to work, right? So that's the first thing to look. Second thing is our fertilizers. Once again, bring it back to that organic fertilizers. But if it's in the spring, and if you have a well-established lawn, if you a well-rooted lawn, you might not even need fertilizer in the spring because, as I mentioned, there's all these hormones and nutrients already stored in your grass's roots. And so they're going to be triggered by the sunlight to just green up right away. So it's kind of unnecessary to have fertilizer in the spring. So ask yourself if you need that. But if you do buy an organic fertilizer, especially in the summer, it really works well in the summer. Finally, the pest and weed control. Yes. We always say to look at the label, really read the label of your product and try to find the least toxic product. So avoid any products that say danger or warning on them. Those are signal words to say that they are kind of the most toxic. Go towards the more caution ones, and then try to selectively apply them. So if you take those 3 suggestions, that's pretty good. I know it still is a little bit hard, but fortunately Midwest Grows Green has our point of purchase program, which helps retailers eco-label their natural pesticides, their organic fertilizers, and other natural lawn care products. And there's about 20 stores across Greater Chicago that are displaying our labels. And so we're continuing to increase that program. And on May 6th, we're actually going to be traveling to 8 of those stores to message about eco-friendly products.
Oh, interesting. And can they go on your website and get the list of the products to buy?
Absolutely.
I mean that's the key. And, you know, because people out there want to keep a natural lawn care, but they don't know what to buy.
Yeah.
And the key is, where do I get the list? What do I buy?
Yeah, you can go to our website. There's a couple of links to do, and I'm sure we'll get to them as well, but bit.ly, bit.ly, and then / MGG in caps, POP in uncaps is where you can find the list. And then we also have, for our Midwest Grows Green initiative in general, is once again bit.ly, MGG in caps, web in uncaps. And you can see a lot of stuff from Midwest Grows Green, as well as a lot of these events that are going on, such as Chicago Grows Green Week and our pledge, which is MGG Pledge.
Yeah. Interesting. That's good. I'm glad that you have that list of what to buy.
Yeah.
Now, how can you identify them in hardware stores? And to identify them, you'll have your seal on it, or
So, yeah. So some actually, there is a OMRI, I believe is what it's called, is the organic certification for a program. So you can find that on the label. But for our program, we make it a little bit more noticeable. We have these shelf tags that are pretty evident that say Midwest Grows Green. It has our orange logo, and people can just walk in the store and they'll see that label, and then they'll understand that this is a natural product.
Well, this weekend, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to one of those stores and buy the product, because I'm glad you mentioned the seed, which is good, and because people don't know what kind of seed to buy. They'll just buy seed and put it in the unshaded area.
Yeah, and that's actually one of my biggest tips is, the actual plant that you're applying. First off, if grass isn't going to grow there, don't try to grow it. If it's a very low spot that doesn't drain well, grass isn't going to grow there well, and you're just going to be using product after product. But then, if you are gaining grass, you get what you pay for. So if you pay for really cheap grass seed, it's going to be cheap. It's not going to excel well. There are some better varieties that are more drought tolerant, that are more shade tolerant, and everything like that. So be willing to pay for a little bit more expensive grass seed so that you can have a resilient grass with low inputs overall.
Interesting. Now, do landscapers in the Chicagoland area offer natural lawn care services?
Yeah, there's a couple natural lawn care companies, and we actually maintain a list of natural lawn care companies on our website, on our resources, so MidwestPesticideAction.org. But most lawn care companies actually do provide natural lawn care services, or services that don't use synthetic pesticides or synthetic fertilizers. You just need to know what to ask for as a customer. So you need to make sure that you're asking them for these other natural lawn care things, such as mowing no lower than 3 inches that I mentioned, aeration. Overseeding is another important, because the seed is very important. So you need to know how to ask those things. And so MPAC can help you. My organization can help you with working with your landscaper to make sure that you have the services needed to build or grow a healthy, resilient grass system that is also healthy and not dangerous to your family.
Actually, so when you mow, it cannot be lower than 3 inches then?
That's a suggested height,
Okay.
Lowest would be 2.5 inches, but a lot of people, this is one of the toughest suggestions that we always tell people. They like their grass short, like a fairway, but fairways are mowed, 5 times per week sometimes if you look on your golf course. You don't need to mow that much for your own lawn, and it's really, it also not only is it good for your grass, but it can shade out some of your other weeds, such as dandelions, which need sunlight as well. So if you're shading it out and they can't get sunlight, it can't live.
So sometimes I'll see, I'll walk down where I live at, and the neighbor has a sprinkler on for 5-6 hours. Is that over watering the lawn, or?
Yeah, it is overwatering the lawn, and it's a common problem that we see, especially here in the Midwest, where relatively compared to other places, we have a lot of water.
Yes,
sometimes
we have Lake Michigan. Yes.
Yeah, many times, if it rains or anything like that, you don't need to water your lawn, and you can save on watering costs that way. But yeah, the recommended watering for your lawn is 1 inch per week, and you shouldn't just
1 inch per week.
1 inch per week. The common strategy is to get a tuna can or just a measuring cup, put it out there, and once it fills up to 1 inch, then you can move your sprinkler.
Interesting.
So that would be the common suggestion for water. But as I said, you may not even need to water it. Step on your grass. If it bounces back, then it's okay. If it doesn't bounce back, or if you start to see some footprints on your lawn, then maybe it's time to water your lawn.
You mentioned you're comparing a human being when he exercise and buy food, organic food, to stay healthy instead of processed food. And a lot of people don't want to go to a store to buy organic food because they say it's too expensive. And he said, I'll go broke buying organic food, going to these grocery stores that sell organic food. But then comparing it to the lawn, is it expensive to take care of your lawn naturally, like you mentioned? You're comparing.
Yeah. It's going to take time. I will always tell people that it's going to take time when we're talking about costs. And it actually might take a little bit of your effort to begin with, especially if you have had a lawn that's been dependent on these products beforehand, so these synthetic pesticides and synthetic fertilizers, because you've nurtured your lawn to become dependent on these synthetic pesticides and fertilizers. And then so once you take it away, just like our own bodies, let's say you take away a drug from a drug addict, that can stress out the grass, right? And that can stress out your body, and we see all these repercussions. And so what the repercussion might be for your lawn is you might see an outburst in that first year of weed seeds and stuff like that, and that might take a lot of your efforts of either pulling these weeds, adding organic fertilizer, or adding natural pesticides. So that might take a lot of your efforts from your pocket as well as everything like that. But the natural lawn care approach doesn't happen overnight, right? This is 3 to 5 years. So if you're applying these approaches and practices over 3 to 5 years, you're starting to build up this organic matter. You're starting to build up through such things as grass clippings, leaf mulch, compost. And once you start to build up that organic matter and start to build up this resilient root system, then that grass is going to be really healthy year after year. It's going to start springing up by itself, and it's going to need less pesticides and fertilizers and water over time. So 3 to 5 years, you'll start to get the cost savings.
Well, it's just like a human being. If you start staying healthy,
yeah,
you won't have to go to the doctor. You're not sick. You don't miss work. You're enjoying yourself. You're not in bed sick.
Absolutely.
You don't go to the hospital. You don't take pharmaceutical drugs. You're staying healthy. Compared to the lawn, the same thing.
Yeah, it's the same thing. And also, for a synthetic, I will guarantee you that you're going to have to apply that synthetic pesticide and fertilizer year after year after year. It's not the same thing with natural lawn care.
Interesting, yeah, because you go to the store and you say a weed killer, but it doesn't kill the weed. It comes back next year.
Yeah.
So it's the wrong term. But if you go natural lawn care, the initial cost may cost, that first year may cost a little more money, but second year, third year, you're decreasing your costs.
Yeah, absolutely.
And maybe your health too. You're not buying the synthetic products, then you're staying more healthy.
Yeah.
What about compost? Now the word compost is all around. You buy the bins and you do composting. What about compost?
Well, compost can be a great substitute for fertilizer, and in many different ways. The only challenge is of how we can actually apply it to our lawns. It's practical, but there's some things to figure out. So first off, why is compost so great? It does a number of things for your lawn. It increases that organic matter, so it reduces soil compaction. It increases the water retention of your soil. It can improve the nutrient cycling of your soil, and it can also act as its own organic fertilizer, not as potent as some fertilizers, but it can do that with the right soil biology. Now, what are the problems? You just need to make sure first that the compost has the consistency in terms of its content, and then you also need to make sure that there aren't any weed seeds in the compost that you're doing. So first, for consistency. Most compost they use this ratio of carbon to nitrogen. You want a carbon to nitrogen ratio below 30 to 1. Most composts are below that carbon to nitrogen ratio. And then for the dandelions or the weed seeds, you just want to make sure that the compost is very mature.
Is my home, I promise to keep it